Greetings, my name is John Savers, and I'm your host for Top Hat and Buttered Popcorn. Today we're going to review a film entitled Destiny on the Radio, directed by Baran and starring a group of second-tier actors and actresses, amongst whom are one Dylan McDermott, who plays the character of Julian Goddard, and James Belushi, who played the character Eduardo, and James Gros, who played the character Harry Thoreau. Pappy was played by Tracy Walter. Travis played the female, Nancy Travis played the female lead, Lucille. There were some excellent minor performances, and the person who did the perhaps the most stellar performance in this particular film was a gentleman named Gros, who played the part of a Ralph Della Posa, who was the agent for Lucille in the showbiz, the musical area of showbiz. And indeed, Lucille, Ralph Della Posa, and the big wig of the musical showbiz arena, Vinny Vidavici, these three, I think, were stellar, and particularly Ralph Della Posa Gros. Generally speaking, these characters were shallow, caricaturish, allegorical in some ways. The character, for instance, Vinny Vidavici, of course, calls to mind the famous expression by Julius Caesar, "I came, I saw, I conquered." And no doubt these characteristics were supposed to be exhibited by the actor who played Vinny Vidavici, a kind of a conquering type of personality. Of course, Della Posa, as an agent, was perhaps pretty well named also. And it is also a good idea to contemplate the fact that the star, Julian Goddard, had God as the enclosed in his name, and it might be well to contemplate the similarities, at least at root, in Lucille and Lucifer. No doubt the best example of the allegorical usage in this particular film is the character Johnny Destiny, played by Quentin Tarantino. I did not see anything particularly remarkable about this performance. It was certainly competent, but the most striking thing about Tarantino is his jawline. I had never seen Dylan McDermott before, and I thought he did a good job. There is something about him that seems posed, and therefore I thought that he either came up through the modeling business or had extensive early years modeling. The character who played Harry Thoreau, Gros, initially I mistook to be Goldthwait, and so I thought, well, he is doing a better job than I would have expected, so I was sort of impressed by Goldthwait, Bobcat Goldthwait. But then when I found out later that this was not, in fact, Bobcat, but another actor, I thought, well, this is just competent and not extraordinary. As for the appearance of Bobcat Goldthwait, it was strictly comic, and there were a great deal of comic elements in this particular film from beginning to end. There were a great deal of chases or chase angles in this film, but none were played specifically for the Keystone Cop crowd, the slapstick crowd. Still, we do have such things as the cops chasing Julian, and Julian chasing Lucille, and Julian also chasing the dough, the ill-gotten money, which he and his partner Harry had stolen from a bank and for which he did 3 years in prison. The storyline of this particular film is basically that a man escapes from prison and returns to the scene of the crime. In this particular case, the crime happened to be bank robbery, and it just so happens that bank robberies are some of the most severely punished of all the crimes in the statutes. So for his crime, Harry could well expect a 20-25 year sentence, and hence I would expect that amongst escapees from prisons, bank robbers would always be disproportionate. In this case, Harry did break free after 3 years, 3 long years as he put it, and as he said, prison is no place for a man. In a chit-chat with his father, Pappy, his father was something of an eccentric also in the fact that he seemingly resided in the desert as a general proposition, and he might be likened in the way to a modern prospector of some sort. He was a disheveled individual, gregarious in his way, but diffident also, and he kind of apologized to his son for not visiting him in prison, but said that prisons always gave him kind of the willy, so to speak, uneasy feeling. And but this pretty much clued in anyone who wanted to think about the matter that there could not be that close a relationship between father and son. Still, when the news broke that Julian Goddard had indeed escaped from prison in Nevada, and the all points alert that he was probably heading for Las Vegas, Pappy did get wind of it and did come out from the desert. I'd like to get your attention on this particular aspect, if I may. The locus of this particular film was a motel run by and maintained by Harry Thoreau, and it was called the Maryland Motel. One of the reasons that Harry said that he remained at this particular hotel was that he was sure that the person who came out of the pool and drove off in his '69 Plymouth Duster, a classic muscle car, would return, and that since the money taken, the ill-gotten gain, the loot from the bank robbery, happened to be in the trunk of the car, he awaited the return of his money. He had seen it drive off, and he was confident it would return. And one of the reasons that he was confident it would return, I believe, is that he expected that there was a relationship between that swimming pool and this man that would be like a magnet. Please note this. The birth of Johnny Destiny apparently was a heavenly event in the sense that it occurred during a stormy night in which lightning was flashing every which way, and a bolt of lightning struck from the clouds and struck the neon sign of the motel, a Marilyn Monroe logo, and it struck Marilyn and then seemed to ricochet into the pool, and the pool took on a certain eerie glow, and not long after this, erupting from the pool was the naked Johnny Destiny. Incidentally, the pool not only had an eerie coloring, a glow, it had a coloring similar to a illuminated pea soup, hence kind of a swampy color. And indeed, the swimming pool took on, at this point, the character of a womb, and of course, the appearance of Johnny Destiny as a birth. Therefore, it would appear that Marilyn Monroe was, in a sense, the mother at least the logo, the lightning having struck her in the area of the loin, and the father being amongst the tumultuous, stormy elements of that particular evening. This all being so, one can see a kind of a mocking parallel to the advent of Christianity. Now, the film begins with a nice musical arrangement, and it also has a kind of a surreal cutout of the Las Vegas skyline. This skyline has a nice coloring that made it appear almost like a stage prop for a Johnny Carson, David Letterman type of program. But at any rate, I thought it was rather snappy looking, sporty, and eye-catching. And I quickly cut from there to the face, an Art Deco radio, in which the moviegoer is informed of the events relative to Julian Goddard's escape. And the camera then cuts to a sprawled individual in a apparent desert location, and reddish-brown rocks everywhere. And the camera forces one to look at the tattoo on the arm of this particular individual, a young man, brunette, very presentable individual, but unclean and so forth. This particular person, as it turns out, is Julian Goddard. He does, as I say, have this tattoo, and it's a curious thing, I'll say parenthetically, that in regard to people found in prisons, amongst the white prisoners, the white inmates, the two most common aspects of behavior or appearance would be cigarette smoking and tattoos. I do not say there's a causal relationship between cigarette smoking, tattoos, and imprisonment, but there is a very, very high correlation of prisoners who have tattoos and who smoke cigarettes. Therefore, we have in this particular individual a flash, for those who are sharp, that this is a character of a renegade-like or outlawish strain in his character. The camera carries on with a view of this man. He tries to get himself together. There's a cut to a coyote's face, a close-up, and we see this canine viewing the sprawled individual. And a curious aspect of this film, I'll say also parenthetically, is that the coyote appears a number of times throughout this film, and hence takes on the character of a symbol. And the symbol may well be that of a spirit within the context of Indian lore. This I am not well versed in, so I can only speculate. Or on the other hand, it may be a symbol of death, a denizen, a carrion eater, a creature that came out from the austere and dead-like desert, lifeless desert lands, and made its way into Las Vegas, a kind of oasis, a bouquet, as it were, upon the mausoleum, which is Nevada. Now, about this time, we have a camera cut to a speeding vehicle, a late model vehicle. We judge it pretty quickly to be some kind of old classic muscle car, and it's tearing down this dirt road and kicking up quite a bit of dust, and the camera that commences to cut from this car to Julian as Julian is walking and the car is tearing down the road in such a way as to suggest a convergence, which of course is exactly what happens. And this is a technique very old in this particular usage. Along with the cuts, we did not get a full look at the driver of this vehicle, but we did get suggestions of his character in the sense that there were cuts that showed a red frilled, kind of a ruby red frilled shirt, dark coat. This individual was a free spirit of some sort, and perhaps just the sort of person to be simpatico with the plight of Julian Goddard. Julian finds his way to the road in advance of the car and stands squarely in the center of this dusty road as the car comes barreling down at him. And I thought myself of the matador, because the way he stood, the way he looked was somewhat suggestive of this, and also the defiance. But the careening vehicle called to mind a charging bull in the way. This particular car was brought to a stop a couple of feet from the body of Julian Goddard, and in the stopping kicked up such a huge amount of red dust that it arose and surrounded the body of Julian Goddard, and in this way conjured up a kind of red fog. In this particular setting, we see our matador slump to the ground. The driver of the vehicle gets out and goes and bends down to assist Julian Goddard, and ends up offering him a ride, and of course it learns quickly that he's wanting to go to Las Vegas, and makes some kind of comment about all roads leading to Las Vegas, but all Nevada roads at any rate. So they travel along, and Julian Goddard, naturally being an escapee from prison, is not what you would call verbose, but never mind, because the person who is driving happens to be. And his name is Destiny, Johnny Destiny. And we see him as a dark-haired, dark-suited individual, slim, tall, and he has that frilled and ruffled ruby red shirt. And he talks a little bit about his vehicle, and we learn that it's a '69 Plymouth Duster. On this particular vehicle, he has Roadrunner hubcaps as a decorative item. Otherwise, the car is quite drab and appears to be a kind of a drab green or gray. Be that as it may, when they pulled up Johnny Destiny and Julian Goddard, they were almost met immediately by a very angry, red-haired woman who was coming out of one of the rooms, apparently quite furious because she had been done dirt by some man, any man, I guess. But there was some suggestion she might have been a call girl of some sort, a working girl, because she seemed to be furious that she was left only $20. And she also happened to know Johnny Destiny, and Johnny Destiny stepped forward to console her, and he had her repeat a kind of a mantra, apparently of his, luck changes, it always has. And this gets her back into a good mood, settled down, and she goes off with Johnny Destiny. Julian sticks around and reminisces with Harry, and he learns that Lucille has not stayed faithful, but has taken up with Eduardo, and he learns that Harry does not have the money. Now, the first instance got Julian angry, and kind of ready to throw and smash, but when he, in fact, he did throw and smash. In fact, he has a personality which is given to these rash explosions of anger at inanimate objects, throwing things, smashing things, and so forth. And we see him later in the movie do the same thing to a motorcycle, which displeased him, kicking and kicking and kicking it. But during this episode, it was some other kind of appliance or other that he smashes and throws beer bottles and so forth to express his annoyance at this turn of events. But he also learns that Harry doesn't have the money, and that causes him to really go off, and he starts a tussle with Harry. Kind of a one-sided affair here as he knocks Harry around a couple of good blows there. And he's standing over, kind of bent over Harry, getting ready to smack him a few more times, and Harry puts a well-placed foot into the groin of Julian, and this causes a loss of order, and by kind of a mutual consent, there was a ceasefire. Discussions were carried on, and it was at this point that Harry Thoreau introduces the concepts of mysticism and using words such as cosmic and spirit and so forth to kind of clue in anybody who was interested that this was going to be that kind of a flick. Now, he had, of course, seen the birth of Johnny Destiny, and so he was a true believer, and we can give him credit at least for this, that given the mechanics of this particular film, it was not an altogether irrational thing for him to want to await the return of this particular individual, Johnny Destiny. And, of course, it proves to be a wise move. But while he's awaiting Johnny Destiny, Julian sets out to locate Lucille. And Johnny Destiny also, if he can stumble across him, because he now believes that the ill-gotten money, the loot he had taken in the bank robbery, was with Johnny Destiny. The whole reason for taking that money was intimately related to Lucille and his idea of their going out and kind of run fun, having a kind of an easy life on the ill-gotten loot. Consider this. The camera has cut also to the whereabouts of Lucille. She is first encountered in bed with Tuardo, played by James Belushi, and very competently and enjoyably. In fact, his character was one of the, along with Lucille's, one of the two best drawn of this otherwise shallow depiction of people. We see them in bed. We learn that Lucille fears that she is pregnant by means of Tuardo. Tuardo, of course, is a earthy, exuberant personality, confident in his power. He is a figure of some stature in this particular film. And not only does he operate a hotel or manage the hotel in Las Vegas, but they have facilities in Atlantic City, and he is given to making humorous comments about such as losing his tan in Atlantic City and really having very little good to say about Atlantic City and not wanting to invest any more company money in this particular facility. Nevertheless, now, one of the curious things about Julian is not only is he rash, but he apparently is a little on the superstitious side also. We have him showing some anger toward Lucille when he learns that she is pregnant, because he figures being in prison for 3 years and not having seen her, it would be difficult for him to be the father. Lucille counters that, no, in fact, Julian was indeed the father, and that he had gotten her pregnant in some sort of dream fantasy that she had. And Harry became quite convinced because he had had a very similar fantasy himself. So he was very content in this pregnancy. Eventually, Lucille and Julian marry at one of those little bridal shops that Las Vegas is famous for. Now, in regard to this aspect, having gotten married, they were determined to get, at least Julian was, to get his share of the loot from Johnny Destiny and run down to South America, if possible, with his new bride, Lucille. Lucille was game at this point in time, kind of head over heels for Julian, and they make it back to the Maryland motel, and at the motel they get cornered by these two cops. This is the second episode in which the cops seem to do a credible or semi-credible job. Yes, but so the cops were quite frustrated. So they told Julian, "Get your hands up," and so forth. "Coming down, we're going to take you back to prison," and so forth, all that. But he, understanding that he could never have the kind of life he wanted to have with Lucille in the here and now, takes her hand, and they leap into the pool and vanish therein into presumably a infinite universe, a universe of possible roads of life. Now this particular film is very enjoyable from the point of view of the visual aspects. I like the film. However, I will say that on the intellectual level, critiquing this film, it is a new age vehicle and puts forth the customary rubbish one associates with that line of thought.